have First Nations policing recognized by Canada as an essential service.
Tonight, the inquest into the James Smith Cree Nation stabbings has wrapped up.
It's really important that vulnerable populations see themselves reflected in the service.
A new service is being offered to Yukon's vulnerable population.
Wanting to bring culturally appropriate foods to urban Indigenous and the future generations.
And a new cafe serves up dishes that not only taste good, but can be healing. Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News. Testimony at the inquest into the mass stabbings at the James Smith Cree Nation in Saskatchewan is now wrapped up, and the jury is currently in deliberations. Our reporter Rachel May has more on what comes next.
Over the past 2.5 weeks, we've heard testimonies from various agencies and people connected to the tragic stabbing deaths on September 4th, 2022. The purpose of the inquest is not to assign blame, but to give recommendations to prevent similar deaths from happening again. Today, we heard the presiding coroner, Blaine R. Bevan, explain what the jury needs to consider, as well as what is legally required when preparing their recommendations for change. A separate jury report will need to be made for each victim, providing their name and details around their death, and to make recommendations to prevent similar deaths. Family members who lost loved ones during the attacks spoke today about their hopes for the recommendations. Chelsea Stonestand is a member of James Smith Cree Nation and said she hopes to hear recommendations about cultural programming.
When we look at the evidence that spoke to the programming within the Correctional Services Canada systems, it showed that there's a lack of ceremonies.
Joyce Burns was one of the attacked. She also lost her husband. She said being at the inquest has provided insight.
Especially this young man that did this crime, where he came from. And it opened my eyes.
Joyce said that she hopes Indigenous offenders get the chance to relearn their culture.
Just to teach them, our culture, to go back there and try and steer them on the right road.
Chief Robert Head of Peter Chapman Band, a member of James Smith Cree Nation, spoke about his hopes for recommendations.
We need to have First Nations policing recognized by Canada as an essential service.
We're expected to hear the jury's recommendations later this week. Rachel May, APTN National News, Melfort, Saskatchewan.
Thanks, Rachel. A fire that destroyed a school on a First Nation in Northern Ontario last week came up in the House of Commons on Tuesday. Police have charged 4 youths with arson in relation to a fire on the Eabametoong First Nation. The fire has renewed calls for more federal funding in northern communities for fire trucks, equipment, and halls, so these communities have the capacity to fight fires. NDP MP Charlie Angus raised the issue of this lack of fire safety during today's question period.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
Another winter, another tragic fire in Treaty 9. Children at Eabametoong First Nation have no school because it burned in a fire and they had no fire service. Wow. Last winter, Peawanuck lost a beautiful 10-year-old child to a fire, and this government's response was, well, we'll buy you a truck, but we're not going to pay for the fire hall. How do you do fire safety at minus 45 without a fire hall? Will the minister stop nickel and diming the people at Treaty 9 and commit for all the communities properly funded fire halls, vehicles, and a new school for the children of Eabametoong, because every child deserves safety and a comfy school. Hear, hear.
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous Services.
Mr. Speaker, I think all Canadians were so sad to hear about the fire that destroyed the school in Eabametoong. And I spoke with Chief at Lucan on Friday night to reiterate to the Chief that we'll work with the community, not just on fire prevention, of course, the truck that's waiting for the ice roads to be delivered, but also to make sure that those students have a plan to complete their year of study here. I'll be meeting with the Chief and indeed the CEO of Matawa First Nations Tribal Council to be very clear about the support that our government will continue to provide to Eabametoong.
An Indigenous-led organization in the Yukon is unveiling a new initiative to to help keep vulnerable people and those living on the streets safe. Here's Sarah Connors with those details.
On Thursday, this van will be hitting the streets of downtown Whitehorse to help vulnerable people in need. It's called Moccasin Mobile Outreach.
We know right now that Yukon First Nations and Indigenous people are overrepresented in the homeless population.
The pilot project will be operated by the Council of Yukon First Nations and funded by Yukon government. It's part of an overall strategy aimed at providing culturally relevant supports to people in need, as well as enhancing safety in downtown Whitehorse.
We are currently working on getting some shelving and some updating and some other items done before we head out on the road.
The council says it's all about meeting people where they're at, which is why it's staffing the service with Yukon First Nations outreach workers.
I think it's really important that vulnerable populations see themselves reflected in the service, understand the historical trauma, the realities faced by Yukon First Nations. So it's really important to have a Yukon First Nations-led service.
So we have the clean crack pipe kits and clean injection kits, and there's a few.
The van will be well stocked with harm reduction supplies. People who use the service are welcome to take personal care items, hygiene products, warm clothing, and food. Workers will also be trained in things like naloxone and first aid and will be able to connect clients to other services like the RCMP or EMS.
Many of our people do not feel safe phoning the RCMP at times due to legacy and historical issues. So this is really an opportunity for us to provide those supports until the EMS or until RCMP arrive.
The service will operate Thursdays to Saturdays between 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. It will follow a designated route, which includes stops at the Whitehorse Emergency Shelter, bars, and parks. Hotels will also be a priority.
Many people are living in hotels that are on income assistance, so we want to ensure there's safety around that.
Funding will take the pilot project through until the end of March, though the council hopes to offer it for the foreseeable future if there's a need.
Our service is really meant to ensure that people are not dying on the street, freezing, and or being harmed.
Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
Indigenous journalist Brandy Morin left the Edmonton Police Service headquarters this morning after reporting to be fingerprinted. Morin spoke to the media outside of the police station with her lawyer to discuss her January 10th arrest on charges of obstructing a police officer. She was at the site of a homeless encampment being taken down by Edmonton Police as an independent journalist. If convicted, she could face up to 2 years in prison. Several organizations have demanded that the charges against Morin be dropped, saying the media must be allowed to cover news that's in the public interest. Her first court appearance is February 1st.
I feel like my rights have been violated in this. It's been a horrible time. Like, I always knew that there was risk of arrest because of the type of stories that I cover, but until it happens to you, you don't understand the emotional and psychological impact that it has on you. And I think that it is a tactic that they use to send that message, to impede, to insult, discredit, and to intimidate the media.
Well, we want to hear what you think about the arrest of Morin or anything else you'd like to reach out about. Here's how you can continue the conversation. If you have a story you want to share, you can send us an email to news@aptn.ca. You can read or watch our stories over on our website. That's aptnnews.ca. You can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Time for a quick break. Still to come, the latest on child welfare reform in Quebec, a province that has opposed the federal legislation.
Prévoit la nomination par l'Assemblée nationale d'un commissaire au bien-être et aux droits des enfants.
Welcome back. Bill C-92 became law on Indigenous Peoples Day in 2019. It provides rights for Indigenous peoples to exercise jurisdiction over their own child and family services. However, Quebec opposes the federal legislation and has taken the federal government to court. Last fall, Quebec introduced its own child welfare legislation known as Bill 37. But critics say it falls far short of the federal law. Here's Shushan Bacon has this story as read by Maricela Amador.
December 20th, 2023, 4 days before Christmas. The Innu community of Maniutanam celebrated being able to prevent Quebec's Youth Protection Services from taking children out of their community.
Loi sur le commissaire au bien-être et aux droits des enfants.
However, having the power to do that could change, because last October, Quebec introduced Bill 37.
Le projet de loi prévoit la nomination par l'Assemblée nationale d'un commissaire au bien-être et aux droits des enfants qui a pour fonction de promouvoir le bien-être et le respect des droits des enfants.
But Bill 37 isn't specific to Indigenous people like C-92. Quebec Social Service Minister Lionel Carmont tabled Bill 37. He says Indigenous rights are referred to in Chapter 3 of the legislation.
Au bien-être et aux droits des enfants autochtones qui assistent et conseillent le commissaire afin que les intérêts des enfants et des jeunes adultes autochtones soient pris en considération et qu'il soit tenu compte des facteurs historiques, sociaux et culturels qui leur sont propres dans chacun des avis et chacune des recommandations du commissaire.
However, under the bill, this associate commissioner will lack autonomy and will report to the Commissioner for Children's Wellbeing and Rights.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Key players working with Indigenous children are critical of this arrangement. Marjolaine Sioux is a Director General of the First Nations of Quebec and Labrador Health and Social Services Commission, commonly called the FNQLHSSC.
Et malheureusement, avec l'issue qu'on voit maintenant dans le projet de loi 37, bien sûr qu'il y a une déception parce que le titre de commissaire associé n'est pas indépendant dans le sens il doit se rapporter au commissaire qui sera mis sur pied là, pour l'ensemble de la population au Québec.
Régine Laurent, President of the Special Commission of the Rights of the Child and Youth Protection, published a report in April 2021. It suggests, we support the potential establishment of an Indigenous Commissioner for Indigenous Children's Rights, but independent of the Commissioner for Children's Wellbeing and Rights. According to Sioux, Quebec wants to follow up on Commissioner Laurent's report, but the recommendations made by the FNQLHSSC and the Assembly of First Nations Quebec Labrador when Bill 37 was being drafted were not taken into consideration. The minister responsible for social services refused APTN's request for an interview. However, Ian Lafrenière, Quebec's minister responsible for Indigenous Affairs, tried to be reassuring. He said that Bill 37 is a first step in the work to come.
Par la suite, ce qui doit arriver, c'est une consultation. Alors, on aura la chance d'entendre les groupes qui vont se présenter à l'Assemblée nationale pour dire leur vision, leur visée. On se rappellera que la commissaire Laurent avait remis un rapport très important. On s'est engagé à le mettre en place. Et là, ce qu'on a, on crée un poste de commissaire avec un volet qui est autochtone. Mais oui, on va entendre les groupes. Et je parlais à mon collègue Lionel Carmont, on est très à l'écoute.
Meanwhile, Quebec's challenge of C-92's constitutionality has already been heard by the Supreme Court of Canada. The Atikamekw community of Opitsewan, AFNQL, and FNQLHSSC have been patiently waiting for over a year now for a decision. Because, for example, Opitsewan wants to exercise jurisdiction over child and family services using C-92 to create their own Social Protection Act.
Présentement, c'est devant les tribunaux. Je le comprends très bien. Ça ne nous empêche pas de travailler ensemble. On travaille fréquemment avec Obidjouane. Les gens de la protection de la jeunesse travaillent avec le conseil de bande d'Obidjouane. Mais c'est vraiment une question de responsabilité. Et clairement, on trouve que le gouvernement fédéral s'est immiscé dans un champ de compétences qui est provincial.
Despite Quebec's concerns about jurisdiction, Marjolaine Sioux sees it from another perspective, and that Bill 37 should not ignore the federal legislation.
On est actuellement en attente d'une décision imminente de la Cour suprême concernant la loi concernant les enfants, les jeunes et les familles des Premières Nations Inuit et Métis, donc c'est 92. Et ce qu'on disait, c'est que dans ce projet de loi-là, on devrait aussi reconnaître les principes d'une loi qui est en vigueur actuellement.
Consultations will start when Quebec's legislature resumes sitting soon. Sioux says it's still up in the air if she will attend them, as she must consult the communities herself. Meanwhile, a Supreme Court decision on Quebec's constitutional challenge of C-92 is expected this year. A report by Shushan Bacon, APTN National News, Wandake.
A new cafe has opened in British Columbia that's serving up food and drinks that are not only delicious, but healing. APTN's Tina House joins us now from Fort Langley.
Thank you. We're here at the Ancestor Cafe at the beautiful Fort Langley Historical Site. Joining me today is Sarah McConsmorrow and her amazing restaurant that you've just opened here. Tell me a little bit about what you do here.
So this is the Ancestor Cafe, and what we do is we create traditional Indigenous nourishment for urban Indigenous and non-Indigenous health-conscious people.
Amazing. And why did you decide to get into this? And tell me about how important it is for you to offer traditional medicine with your food.
Yeah, so I started the business called Tradish 2 years ago. I wanted to bring culturally appropriate foods to urban Indigenous and the future generations, so I started a plant medicine jam company. It became very successful, and after that, last year I started a food truck, and we started doing some fun powwow foods. And then after that, we decided to start the Ancestor Cafe.
Amazing. Let's have a look at some of the beautiful dishes that you offer here.
Yeah, so we have Indian tacos 3 ways. The first one is a vegan Three Sisters taco, so it's made with corned beans and squash. The second one is a bison Indian taco, so it does have the corned beans and squash, but it also has bison. And then we have an elk one with the Three Sisters as well.
Why is it important for you to offer, say, elk and bison within your tacos?
Because it's our traditional meats, and a lot of us, like me, have been disconnected from our traditional diets. I'm still waiting to taste caribou because that's my traditional meat from where I'm from. It's what our bodies need. It's what our ancestors ate, and it's what our genetics actually process a lot better than, say, beef or chicken.
You also make these incredible drinks here. Tell me a little bit about this one. What's this one in particular?
So these are our fresh squeezed plant medicine lemonades. That one is blackberry sage. That one's a natural decongestant. It's good for sore throat, cough, or cold. The sage has the natural antibacterial properties, and the maple syrup and blackberries helps break up mucus in your chest. Over here we have our bannock with jam. So these are our plant medicine jams that we started with Tradish. They are all 100% organic. They're sweetened with maple syrup. 3 of them are thickened with chia seeds, and then they all have their own plant medicine in them. So our first one is raspberry dandelion. That one's thickened with chia seeds, and that one is good for cleansing your liver, gallbladder, and kidneys. It has cancer-fighting properties, and it helps reduce inflammation in the body. We have our blueberry lavender next. That one is just full of antioxidants, so it's good for your whole body. Then we have our smoky juniper cherry. That one is really good for strengthening the lungs, so overall lung health. And then the blackberry sage, the same as the blackberry sage lemonade, good for mucus buildup, sore throat, cough, or cold. I literally use that one as a cough syrup for my kids. It works amazing. And then we have our chamomile pear. That is good for high blood pressure, hypertension, stress, and sleep. Also helps reduce inflammation in the body, so really good for children who are teething. And then here we have our sweet baked bannock. And then we have some blueberry lavender thumbprint cookies as well. And that pairs very nice with our raspberry dandelion plant medicine tea.
Amazing. I mean, all of this just looks so delicious and so good for you as well.
Yeah.
Sarah, congratulations on your new company, your new venture, your food truck, all of it. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank
and
you
if you
so
get
much.
a chance, come and check out the Ancestor Cafe here at the Fort Langley Historical Site. Back to you in studio.
Hope that's not all Tina tried out there. I would have taken home one of those bison tacos. Well, Manitoba's newest millionaires received their check today. That story and more after the break. Welcome back. Time now for our photo of the day. Tara French was on a walk at Mill Lake Park in Abbotsford, British Columbia when she captured this beautiful photo. Thanks for sharing, Tara. You can send your photos to share@aptn.ca and you could be featured as our next photo of the day. Now let's take a look at tomorrow's weather forecast. Starting on the East Coast, -3 in Halifax, 2 below for Fredericton. -23 for Kuujjuaq, -4 with snow in Nain, +1 in Montreal, 2 above with flurries in Val-d'Or, +4 in Sault Ste. Marie, snow and 2 in North Bay, 5 for Thunder Bay, cloudy and 4 in Sioux Lookout, +5 with snow in God's Lake and Thompson, 4 in Winnipeg, 3 above in Dauphin, +7 for Regina, sunny and 1 in Saskatoon, 2 above in Meadow Lake, 5 in La Ronge. In northern Alberta, 3 for High Level, sunny and 4 in Fort McMurray. Sunny and 6 for Edmonton, 12 above and sunny skies in Lethbridge. 14 for Vancouver, 12 in Kamloops. 12 for Prince George, 7 in Smithers. -37 with snow in Old Crow, flurries and 11 below in Whitehorse. -2 in Yellowknife, -20 for Norman Wells. 23 below in Sax Harbor, snow and -15 in Pawlatuck. -25 for Chesterfield, 22 below in Whale Cove. -27 in Resolute, 35 below in Pangerton. Winnipeg's newest millionaires were named today after winning the Lotto 649, a $5 million jackpot. Crystal McKay and her partner Lawrence Campbell received the check on Tuesday. Campbell bought the single ticket as part of McKay's birthday gift. The couple says they have a large family and plan on purchasing a home and taking the family to Disney. Congrats to them, awesome news. Anishinaabe lawyer Sarah Mainville is our guest on tonight's all-new episode of Face to Face. For nearly 20 years, Mainville has practiced law in areas of self-determination and treaty implementation, but she recently became certified to practice entertainment law.
It's about the stories, because once the stories resonate with public opinion, then you see people saying, we need to do something about this. I think the story of the 215, it was ground shifting. And I think that we have to be really careful, because right now entertainment law is very transactional and could actually do some damage to some storytellers who have very important stories to tell. We want to make sure that they're treated in the way that they should be treated.
You can catch our interview with Sarah Mainville right here in less than 2 minutes' time. That is all the time we have for your APTN National News for this Tuesday. For much more, including links to all of our APTN News podcasts like Our Relatives, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuitch, thanks for being with us. Have yourself a great night.